Let me teach you the easiest way to get into a big tech company and how to avoid the mistakes that are costing people the job. So I had always wanted to work at a big tech company, specifically at Microsoft, but honestly, I doubted whether that dream would ever come true. Turns out though, my very first job would be at Microsoft and I would have 15 months of working experience working on 2 different projects in 2 different countries by the time that I graduated. And now I'm the one doing the interviews for the interns joining my team at Microsoft. But before we start, I'm Holly. I'm a software engineer too at Microsoft. I'm originally from Seattle. I studied in the UK and now I live in London. And over the last 5 years, I've shipped code to billions of people, and through my platform, Her Hello World, I've helped thousands of people get into tech and, thrive in their careers once they get there. So this video is going to take you through some of the most important things that you need to know on how to get an internship. So things like timelines, application strategies, resume tips, what to do if you have no experience, nailing the interview itself, and a little bit of bonus information for those people who want to move abroad or make just a little bit of extra cash. So more on that later. But first, why is getting an internship the easiest way to get into big tech? Well, it's because it's the primary pipeline for early and career talent. So you'll find that most big tech companies fill all of their early and career roles or their graduate roles through their internship pool. And not only that, these big tech companies understand your skill levels. So they're expecting to teach you. They're not hiring for your expertise, they're hiring for your potential. So if you don't know your timelines for getting an internship, you will end up missing your kind of biggest and easiest entry point into big tech. And to give you kind of an indication of how important these timelines are, last year we had our internship applications. They were supposed to be open for a month, but we had so many within the week that we ended up having to close them because there was just no way that we were going to ever get through that amount of applications. You can see how time sensitive it is and the fact that you really do need to apply as soon as possible. So I've broken the timelines out by season. So the first season obviously is summer. So this is going to be your big research and prep phase. This is when you should be looking up the companies that you want to apply for, the skills that they're looking for, when the applications open, close, things like that. This is when you should also be prepping your resume so that when the time comes, your resume is ready to go, it's polished, it's clean, and it's tailored. The next phase is kind of the fall, autumn period. This is a really important phase that most people end up missing. This is when you need to apply, because most applications will open in the kind of October, September timeframe, and most applications are filled on a rolling basis for big tech companies. So a rolling basis basically means that interviewers and recruiters will start reviewing, interviewing, and making offers for people as soon as the applications come in, which means even if the kind of application says that they'll be open until December, they'll probably close before that. And so you want to be the first one to apply to get your name at the top of that list and to go through the process before anybody else does. This is also an important time to kind of use the services that are available to you. So the different career services and kind of advice that you can get. So I used my university's career services to review my CV and cover letter, and then also go through some various kind of trainings for different types of interviews. So phone interviews, video interviews, in person, and assessment centers. It meant that I came off as, really confident and translated really well to my interviewers. When you start getting into kind of the winter time frame, this is when, you should have already started to do some of your interviews. You would have been doing some of the early stages of your interviews in the fall period, and now into winter, you're going to be doing kind of the later stages of your interviews. By the end of the winter period, so around the holiday season, ideally you will have already been made an offer, because that tends to be when both applications close and when big tech companies want to kind of wrap up their kind of interviewing stages. When you start getting into spring, some companies may still be open. You might still be doing the final stages of the interview. But if you don't have an offer yet, this is when I would really start looking into those smaller, medium-sized companies, just so that you have an option going into your kind of summer internship period. With our timelines in mind, it's time to break out the strategies for each part of the application process that's going to help us land that job. The first strategy is designed to make sure that you definitely get an internship, even if it isn't in a big tech company. So if you're in university, you might have already used the safety, likely, and reach strategy. It's kind of just a way to categorize your application choices, prioritize your applications, and then give you these fallback options. This video is obviously about getting into big tech, but there's lots of companies out there that are not in big tech and that are still really cool to work for. And really the goal to, if you want to start your career off strong, is just getting any kind of work experience, and then you can always build up to going to a big tech company after your internship. So use this strategy, kind of identify the safety companies in which you feel really confident that you'll get into. So smaller companies with less competition are kind of a good option here. Your likely companies are the ones that you'll get into, maybe with a bit of work though. So small, medium-sized companies, better known companies, ones where maybe your skills are pretty well aligned, but you might need a little bit of stretch. And then your reach companies, these are the big tech companies, the ones with lots of competition or that are more technically challenging. You want to apply to your reach companies first because these are the ones that are going to be filled on a rolling basis, are going to have the most competition, and then follow up with your likely and safety choices based on kind of when applications close. So the resume stage is kind of like the first big hurdle that you're going to have to pass. So I've reviewed a lot of resumes and most of them did not effectively sell themselves. So these are the biggest tips that I use to help people go from getting no interviews to getting interviews at places like Nintendo and Microsoft. The first is the XYZ method. This is a technique that's advised by Google recruiters, and the idea is to make sure that your impact and capabilities are really clear. So first, you want to describe what you achieved. That's your X. Describe how your achievement was measured. That's your Y. And then describe what you actually did. So that's your Z. So as an example, instead of saying something like provided customer service at a local retail store, you could say demonstrated exceptional customer service skills resulting in a 20% increase in customer satisfaction scores and recognition from management. Or instead of assisted in data entry and analysis, you could say streamlined data entry and analysis processes by implementing automation tools, reducing the time spent by 50% and improving accuracy. Now, the next thing to be aware of is that you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to be the one that works the most strategically. So here's how to stand out even if you don't have the best grades or the most experience. But first, if you're liking this video, please do show me some love by liking, subscribing, and sharing any kind of questions that you have in the comments. Now, to demonstrate these kind of extra skills and show that you're this holistic person, something that big tech companies love because it shows that you have all this kind of extra potential, you want to look at kind of what other experiences that you can get and how you can sell those transferable skills. So if you're looking for things like leadership, communication between different audiences, finding solutions, find ways to be a course representative. Or if you're looking to show leadership, passion for your subject, organization, time management, prioritization skills, go look at being like a society or a club leader. If you want to show your technical know-how, your ability to teach, adaptability, this is a good way of getting a strong reference. Be a lab helper for kind of the younger students. Now, if you don't want to get involved in any of those extra activities or find a job elsewhere, you can also build your own projects. So I do think that every developer should have a personal project. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it really is your space on the internet to define your brand and demonstrate your skills. It can also show that you can create something end to end. If you are a developer, build something by hand. If you're not a developer, take a look at some kind of no-code or low-code solutions. All right, now we're on to the interview stage. So there are kind of two main parts of the interview. Most people seem to lose points on the easiest part. So generally, you've got your competency questions, and then you also have your technical questions. Now, people tend to fear the technical questions the most, so they spend basically all their time prepping for these, but that means they really neglect these competency or behavioral questions, which are like the easiest points to get, but the ones that people seem to miss the most because they simply do not prep for them. I had an interview where a kid literally said he can't answer a question because he just could not think of an example. Competencies are things like adaptability, collaboration, customer focus, drive for results, effective communication. You can look up just like whole lists of these. So in competency questions look like, tell me about a situation where you had to adjust your approach or priorities due to kind of like an unexpected circumstance. So this one's about adaptability. You can generally kind of figure out what competencies a company is looking for simply by looking at their website, in the job description, how they refer to themselves. And sometimes they literally will list it out for you. Or otherwise, a lot of companies will just have the shared competencies. So if you kind of prep for a few of them, you'll kind of have an example and a response ready to go for kind of another company as well. Now, if you haven't noticed, I love a formula. So the next formula we're going to use is the STAR method. This is situation, task, action, results. So your situation is kind of what is the context. Your task is what is the actual problem. Your action is what did you do? And your result is, what is the impact? How was that measured? So this formula is really here to kind of help keep your responses clear, concise, cover everything that the interviewer is looking for without having to make them work for it. So just like the XYZ method where we didn't want to make the interviewer work hard then, we also use the STAR method to make it easier for the interviewer during the actual in-person interview. So now you can prep for these advanced. So identify some of the key competencies, identify examples where you've demonstrated these, write out your response using the STAR method, and actually just practice saying aloud. You'll need to find a way to make it feel natural and kind of get over some of those hurdles. You'll again come off as much more prepared, much more confident, and get you those points that could really tip you over into that offer list. Now for the technical questions, I'm not going to dive into how to solve every single problem, but instead I will pass over some kind of resources and top tips on how to prepare for those technical interviews. So first, for the resources, I would take a look at LeetCode, Geeks for Geeks, Cracking the Coding Interview. They all give you practice examples, share solutions, and give you actual insight into interviews for particular companies. And now in terms of just kind of general tips, the first big thing to do is to not forget to ask clarifying questions and make sure you understand the requirements. Make sure that you're actually speaking aloud to explain your thought processes. We're trying to understand how you think. That's really the most important thing. Also, make sure that you're taking the interviewer's tips. If you get stuck, they're there to help you. It is also a way to demonstrate that you know how to learn and take advice. And finally, if you know that you don't have necessarily the time to do something, you can always mention that this is something that you'd want to do or something to be aware of. Phew. All right. So that has been a lot of information, but we aren't even quite done yet. Because again, we like to work smarter and not harder in this community. This is just a kind of a quick final reminder to please write everything down. This is to help you write down your answers to your STAR questions, write down the answers to the application questions, write down what stage you are in the process. You'll find a lot of the responses can be reused. So do yourself a favor, write it down and save it for later. And so as a bonus for those who are dreaming of moving abroad, an internship could be the answer and also could be a way to make more money than you thought was even possible. So getting student visas is a lot easier than kind of a full-time visa. So companies will be able to sponsor you as a student for an internship abroad. And because internships are the kind of primary gateway into a full-time job, you're much more likely to get a post-graduation sponsored job by doing an internship and building a relationship with the team first. And as a reminder, salaries are not the same in every country, even if the cost of living is. So for example, I made around £21,000 salary, which is actually now a bit more in the £30,000 range. But my effective yearly salary as an intern in the USA was around £80,000. So that's quite the difference. So I basically made as much money as I did in 3 months working in Seattle as I did in 1 year working in the UK. So now because you've made it to the end of this video, you are more prepared than most students that I see interviewing. If you found this video helpful, please do hit the like and subscribe buttons and let me know what I should cover in more depth in the comments. Super excited for the start of this new YouTube journey for me. So love you lots.